All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Logan Middleton, and I am the Content Communications Manager for the Association for Writing Across a Curriculum. And today I'm going to be chatting with Dr. Ryan Ware and Dr. Bruce Kovanen, two editors, co-editors of the new journal Literate Activity: Perspectives on Textual Practices in the World from WAC Clearinghouse. So, welcome, Ryan. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks, Logan.
thanks
Yeah.
for having us.
Of course, yeah, my pleasure. Just to start, would love to chat a little bit with you about this journal, Literate Activity. If you could just tell us and tell our membership a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, happy to. It's been a product of now kind of several years of labor and conversations about how do we think about research on writing in ways that, I don't know, keep the complexity in the frame. I think that's been one of our sort of key points with the journal is wanting to host a space where people can think deeply with data, and to do so in a kind of encouraging and supportive environment. I think that's also part of what we wanted to do with the journal was to be a space to think through these ideas and have interesting conversations with authors about what they're seeing with people situated textual practices.
Yeah, and one of the things we really wanted to try to capture, like it was really important from the start, was that textual practices, cultural textualities, the ways we act with texts are so ubiquitous and so washed across our lives that we wanted to underscore how mundane textual action is and make a space for, the complexities of the mundane. So we hope to do that with our issues going forward with literate activity.
That's fantastic. And just to make sure, that I'm following, it sounds like you're talking about literate and or textual practices outside of the classroom. And it sounds like the kind of lens you're looking at in this journal or working through is a little bit different than maybe more quote unquote traditional models of literacy and writing. Do I have that right?
Yeah, for sure. Uh, One of the things I found working some of my like dissertation scholarship into publication was that those pieces were coming out in issues that where the frame was kind of slightly off. So I was talking about texts and textual practices kind of differently than in these bigger sort of writing studies spaces, and I found that us I found maybe that a niche, for us to inhabit was starting to form in my head. But yeah, so I felt like I wanted to occupy this niche and make a place for not only those, you're right, the broadened sense of like what literacies are and what they can be, but as Bruce was noting earlier, keeping the complexities in mind. Um, and complexities across the board. So managing complexities in data collection, the ways in which we represent data in texts, start to shed more light on textual practices across our life worlds.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And so you all kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is a new journal. It looks like you are accepting submissions for your inaugural issue. But if you could say a little bit about, why this journal at this point in time, that would be lovely.
Yeah, I think, you know, part of why this journal at this time is, and I think especially too for like these audiences and why we wanted to be published through the WAC Clearinghouse, was, we see a literate, activity frame uh, inviting participation and scholarship from people across disciplines who are interested in textual practice, and can be a kind of space, hopefully or ideally, where these ideas can come into contact with one another. And I think we, in our own kind of like reading of scholarship from fields outside of what one might consider writing studies, seeing really rich descriptions of people's embodied actions, their talk. But then it was kind of foreclosed or not really included, their actions with text, and thinking about, well, how could we kind of have this journal space be somewhere we can kind of bring all of these things together, where it's not just writing, just reading, just talking, but kind of seeing like these um, multi-layered simultaneous deployments of multi-semiotics, to get really
Mm.
technical. But to just kind of say that, so often I think, to Ryan's earlier point, we pull these things apart in our research and writing and focus on kind of like singular modalities, but that's not really how people live their lives.
Hmm.
And, the journal can kind of be a space where it's like, well, what if we explored that instead of trying to smoothen that away? Um, and that's something that I think is kind of an important part of what I'd like to see kind of the field engage with.
That we're interested in scholarship that may not look like typical scholarship, like the IMRAD style. So we've tried to develop some early strange genres for the journal. So we have I'm thinking particularly of the space we call emergent scholarship and dialogue, in which folks will hopefully submit strips of data, and then have some sort of narrative around those data, what they're still thinking about around the data, what they're thinking about in terms of how to represent that data. And then we pair folks with other scholars across the field. So it's not a traditional sort of review scenario. It's a sort
Mm.
of response corner that maybe will lead to other maybe paired scholarship in the future, conversations that might not have happened without that sort of emergent scholarship section of our journal. So we really want to press on the ways in which we're communicating information in the field around literate activity. And that's another sort of why now is maybe trying to think differently about how we are just broadly representing research in the field.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, that all sounds great. That sounds incredibly generative, and it seems like it would be of particular interest to writing across the curriculum audiences, taking that kind of broad view of layered semiotic activity, I think, as you put it, Bruce. So, yeah, that's excellent. How can folks engage your work? Where would you direct them to if they wanted to engage, learn more, participate, what have you?
We'd direct them straight to the WAC Clearinghouse, and that's one of the reasons we went with the WAC Clearinghouse, is because it's open access and we want open access to our publication. So not only will they be finding our stuff there, but this wealth of other scholarly spaces that are having some exceptional scholarly conversations around writing across the curriculum and beyond.
And but beyond that, I think, checking out the website, there's a variety of different ways to engage. I think, going forward, we'll also be circulating calls for reviewers. So if this is kind of the work that sounds interesting to you, we really encourage you to reach out and have a conversation about, how you'd like to engage and partner with us in this work. I think one thing to kind of go off Ryan's point about emergent scholarship and dialogue, I think it's reflective of a broader approach to peer review, in that, unlike I think a lot of journals or publications, like we want reviewers to, well, we invite reviewers to sign their reviews, to not make them anonymous, and to think more about how this process of peer review can be one that's generative, more focused on conversation and ideas, and of how we work through those in a piece, than I think, the stereotypical figure of reviewer two with the
Mhm.
red pen, and those sorts of things. I think that's another part of our journal space that I wanted to kind of foreground and highlight here too.
Excellent. Yeah, and we'll be sure to link directly to you all's landing page in all of our materials in terms of the social media posts and when we upload this video. I don't know
And
if
we
you.
also have an Instagram that we're trying to get off the ground. And it seems like currently our followers are the people that we know. So we might direct people to our Instagram because we have some posts that we're rolling out slowly that are just broadly interesting textual engagements that we see in the world. So Kevin Rusin is also a co-founding editor, and he's been sending many photographs of like writing across time, and I mean time like with like the capital T. So like ancient Mesopotamian stuff that he finds fascinating. And so we're rolling out these posts that just think about textual practices differently beyond just like capital W writing. So maybe our Instagram will be a space for folks to go and engage with and see the sort of capacious way in which we're thinking about textual practices as well.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really ideal platform for the types of artifacts and texts and objects you're looking at, right? It's not just, doesn't sound like it's just stock photos of people holding pens.
No, no.
Definitely not.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else you all want people to know about the journal, your work, literate activity writ large? Anything come to mind as we move toward wrapping up?
I think people, uh, so scholarly journals have this reputation of being for, the proven PhD folks, and we're willing to and hope to look at scholarship with from standpoints across the academy. So we're happy to mentor graduate students, undergraduate students through the publication process if they're thinking interestingly and complexly about literate practices and literate activity broadly. It's this sort of gatekeeping thing where that we want to push against. You don't have to have a PhD in writing studies to engage in thinking deeply about textual practices. So.
Yeah, and to kind of second that, we encourage a really capacious frame around literate activity and textual practice. It's not like this is a journal where you only have to cite, for example, Paul Pryor's work on literate activity, but that we encourage people to kind of take up what that complexity means to them in a variety of ways. And I think so far with the submissions and the kind of different scenes and settings that people have been exploring literate activity in, we're heartened and encouraged by that and want to see that continue with future submissions to the journal.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Bruce and Ryan, for your time today, and best of luck with the launch of the journal. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic first issue. So thanks a bunch.
Yeah.
Thanks, Logan.